13,000 years ago, Earth was warming. The ice was retreating. Rivers flowed, forests spread, and life thrived. Mammoths roamed the plains, saber-toothed cats stalked the shadows, and the Clovis people mastered the hunt with weapons of stone. It was an age of balance, a fragile paradise at the dawn of human history. And then everything changed. A sudden freeze, a darkness that fell across the skies, a silence where megafauna once thundered. Entire species vanished, and the Clovis culture disappeared with them. What caused this cataclysm? Was it fire from the heavens, a comet's shattered heart igniting the skies, or something else hidden beneath the ice? This is the mystery of the Younger Dryas, the day the world froze. 13,000 years ago, the world stood at the threshold of change. The Great Ice Age was retreating. Vast glaciers that had dominated the northern hemisphere for millennia were melting, releasing torrents of water into newly carved rivers, feeding great lakes that shimmered under the pale sun. North America was a continent in transformation. Its landscapes stretched wide and wild, from tundra plains and wind-swept steppes to dense coniferous forests and rich wetlands teeming with life. Across these landscapes walked giants, the megafauna of the Pleistocene. Woolly mammoths lumbered across the grassy plains, their shaggy coats swaying as they tore up clumps of grass with their curved tusks. Nearby, mastodons wandered through forest groves, breaking branches with a force that echoed like thunder. On the horizon, the massive shapes of ground sloths towering as high as a small house reared up to strip leaves from trees. In the shadows, predators prowled. Saber-toothed cats with gleaming fangs, dire wolves hunting in coordinated packs, short-faced bears rising taller than any human. It was a world ruled not by men, but by beasts of legendary size and strength. And yet, men were there, adapting, thriving, and even challenging these titans of nature. The people of the Clovis culture, they were not primitive cave dwellers as the old stereotypes once suggested. They were hunters, tool makers, and explorers, a people whose skill and ingenuity allowed them to spread across an entire continent. The Clovis are best remembered for their weapons, specifically their finely crafted spear points, long, slender, and fluted down the center. These blades of stone were works of both beauty and precision, designed to penetrate the hides of mammoths, mastodons, and bison. Each point was the product of hours of delicate craftsmanship, chipped, flaked, and polished by skilled hands that understood the art of survival. Archaeologists have found these points scattered across the continent, from the eastern woodlands to the deserts of the American Southwest. They are the unmistakable fingerprint of a people who, for a brief moment in history, stood at the pinnacle of adaptation. Clovis hunters were masters of strategy, working together in coordinated groups to bring down animals many times their size. Imagine standing on the cold, open plain, your breath visible in the air, the thunder of mammoth herds shaking the earth beneath your feet. The hunters moved silently into position, their spears ready. One mistake could mean death, but success would mean food, clothing, tools, and survival for the entire band. The Clovis people were not merely surviving, they were flourishing. They spread quickly across North America, establishing a presence in nearly every region within just a few centuries. They were innovators, problem solvers, and stewards of a landscape filled with dangers and opportunities alike. For thousands of years, this balance endured. The animals grazed, the predators stalked, and the hunters thrived. The climate was warming, the ice was melting, and the world seemed to be moving steadily into a new age of abundance. It was, in every sense, a golden age, a time of equilibrium between man and nature, a time when the rhythms of life seemed eternal, uncheckable, permanent. But history teaches us that balance is fragile, and often, it is only in hindsight that we recognize the calm before the storm. Because for the Clovis people, for the mammoths, the saber-tooths, and the vast ecosystems that stretched across the land, the end of Eden was closer than anyone could have imagined. The ice still melted, the rivers still flowed, but something was coming, something sudden, violent, and utterly transformative, a cataclysm that would rewrite the destiny of this world. This is where the story of the Younger Dryas begins. But before we descend into disaster, we must first linger in this fleeting moment of harmony, this fragile paradise, at the very dawn of human history. The harmony ends here, abruptly, because when archaeologists began digging into the soil of North America, they stumbled upon something deeply unsettling, a thin, dark band in the earth, stretching across an entire continent. To the untrained eye, it is simply dirt, but to scientists, it is what they call an event horizon, a line in the soil that marks a sudden and profound break in history. This band has a name, the black mat. It is a thin layer of dark sediment, only a few centimeters thick, yet it holds within it one of the greatest mysteries of prehistory, rich in carbon, flecked with strange materials. Its age is precise, about 12,800 years ago, the very moment when the world of mammoths, mastodons, and Clovis hunters came to an abrupt end. Archaeologists found it again and again, in New Mexico, in Arizona, in the Great Plains, even in sites as far away as South Carolina, always the same, a dark horizon slicing across the soil, and always the same haunting pattern. Beneath the black mat, the earth is filled with abundance, the bones of mammoths, the remains of mastodons, the tools of the Clovis, a record of a thriving ecosystem and a flourishing culture. But just above it, silence. The megafauna are gone. More than 35 species of large mammals vanish from the record. The Clovis spear points, so common below, are suddenly rare, almost non-existent, an entire way of life, erased in the space of a geological heartbeat. What happened here? What force was powerful enough to wipe out the giants of the Ice Age and shatter the first great human culture of the Americas? To some, this thin band of dark soil is nothing less than a tombstone, a grave marker etched into the earth itself, a collective burial ground for animals, people, and entire ecosystems. But every crime scene demands a culprit, and so we are left with the most chilling question of all. If the black mat is a grave, then who, or what, was the killer? The black mat is our crime scene, but a crime scene is only the beginning. What we need are clues, fingerprints, the tiny traces left behind by the killer. And so, enter the Comet Research Group, a team of geologists, physicists, and archaeologists who believe they've uncovered the forensic evidence of a cosmic disaster. They say the black mat is not just dirt. It is a record of fire, impact, and destruction on a planetary scale. Clue number 1. The microspherules. Under a microscope, the black mat reveals glittering particles so small they look like stars scattered across the night sky. These are tiny droplets of metal and glass. They are formed when rock is heated to thousands of degrees, melted, blasted into the atmosphere, and then cooled as they rain back down to Earth. On battlefields, microspherules are the residue of explosions. In prehistory, they may be the residue of something far greater. Clue number 2. Nanodiamonds. Even smaller than the microspherules, invisible to the naked eye, are crystals of pure carbon, forged under unimaginable pressure and heat. On Earth, such diamonds can form deep in the mantle, or under the shock of a cosmic impact. Finding nanodiamonds scattered through the black mat is like finding shattered glass at the scene of a car crash. It tells us something violent happened here, something far beyond the ordinary. Clue number 3. Platinum. Scientists measured the black mat layer and found something startling. Platinum in concentrations far higher than the surrounding soil. On Earth, platinum is rare. So rare it was once valued more than gold. But in space, it is common, especially in asteroids and comets. It is a chemical signature of something not from here, something that fell from the sky. Taken separately, each clue is fascinating, but taken together, microspherules, nanodiamonds, platinum, all in the same layer, all across multiple continents, all at exactly the same moment in time. It forms a pattern, a forensic fingerprint of an extraordinary event. And the message these clues whisper is chilling. 12,800 years ago, the Earth was struck, or brushed, by a cosmic force. It unleashed heat beyond imagining, shockwaves of fire and wind, a storm that swept across continents. And when the sky cleared, the world had changed forever. The forensic clues point us toward a suspect. And now it's time to name that suspect. The leading theory is known as the Younger Dryas Impact hypothesis. It suggests that around 12,800 years ago, Earth crossed paths with a comet. Not a single massive rock, but a fragmented body, a cosmic intruder that shattered into pieces as it entered the atmosphere. Imagine the Laurentide ice sheet, a vast expanse of ice covering millions of square kilometers across Canada and the northern United States. Now imagine those comet fragments slamming into it, or exploding in the skies above it. The result was not a single impact crater, but an entire region scorched, shaken, and drowned by catastrophe. First came the shockwaves and heat. A blast in the upper atmosphere would have released energy many times greater than the most powerful nuclear weapons ever created. The air itself would have ignited, forests across entire continents catching fire in moments. Archaeologists point to the thick layer of carbon within the black mat, a signature of wildfires so massive they reshaped ecosystems overnight. Next came the floods. The heat of the explosions would have melted vast quantities of glacial ice. Imagine rivers turned to torrents, lakes bursting their banks, and unimaginable volumes of water tearing across the land. This may help explain landscapes like the channeled scablands of Washington state, carved by floods so sudden and violent that entire valleys were scoured to bedrock in just days. But the disaster didn't end there. Dust, ash, soot, and water vapor were blasted high into the atmosphere. They formed a veil around the planet, blocking sunlight, plunging the Earth into darkness. Temperatures fell abruptly and stayed low for over 1,000 years. This was the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to Ice Age conditions at the very moment the world had begun to thaw. To the people alive at the time, it must have felt like the end of everything. Firestorms raging, floodwaters consuming the land, then a bitter winter settling over the world. For mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and even the great Clovis culture, it truly was the end. And so the comet becomes our suspect. Its crime, the destruction of an entire world. The comet, if it truly struck, did not just wipe out animals and ecosystems. It may have swept away something far more profound. Writer and researcher Graham Hancock poses a provocative question. What if the Younger Dryas impact did not only erase mammoths and Clovis hunters, but also obliterated an advanced Ice Age civilization? one that history has forgotten. This idea is controversial. Many archaeologists dismiss it outright, and yet, there is one place that keeps pulling the conversation back. Göbekli Tepe, a site in modern-day Turkey, built around 11,600 years ago, exactly when the Younger Dryas period came to a sudden end. Here, on a hilltop, hunter-gatherers raised megalithic pillars weighing up to 20 tons, carved with animals, symbols, and abstract shapes. It was a construction project so ambitious it seemed to appear out of nowhere. The leap from small-scale nomadic camps to a monumental sacred complex defies easy explanation. Why here? Why then? Could it be that Göbekli Tepe was the work of survivors? People carrying knowledge from a world destroyed. One particular stone has fueled this speculation. Pillar 43, also called the Vulture Stone. At first glance, its carvings appear to be animals, scorpions, birds, and abstract shapes. But some researchers believe these are not random decorations, but a coded sky map, a record of constellations, aligned to a date roughly 10,950 BC, the very moment the Younger Dryas catastrophe began. Look closer. A vulture seems to hold a circular disk interpreted by some as the sun, or perhaps a comet fragment. Nearby, a headless figure could symbolize death from the skies. If true, then the Vulture Stone may be the oldest astronomical record ever discovered. Not just art, but memory. And this leads to an astonishing possibility. Göbekli Tepe may not simply have been a temple. It may have been a message, a kind of prehistoric black box, designed by survivors to preserve knowledge of the heavens and to warn future generations of the devastation they had witnessed. Did a forgotten civilization advanced in ways we do not yet understand perish in fire and ice? Did the survivors embed their warning in stone, hoping that one day someone would listen? We may never know the full truth, but the stones of Göbekli Tepe continue to whisper, and their message is still being decoded. We have traveled far, across millennia, from a stable Ice Age world teeming with mammoths and hunters, to a sudden crime scene in the Earth itself, to forensic clues hidden in spherules, diamonds, and platinum, to a suspect from the stars, a comet that may have reshaped history, and finally, to Göbekli Tepe, where survivors may have carved their warning into stone. This story is not a closed book. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis remains controversial, debated fiercely in labs and lecture halls. Yet, with every new discovery, the evidence grows more compelling. Something extraordinary did happen 12,800 years ago, something that changed the trajectory of life and civilization on this planet. But the true power of this story lies not only in the past, it lies in what it says about us today. The Younger Dryas reminds us of a sobering truth, that civilization, no matter how confident, no matter how advanced, rests on fragile ground. Our world, like theirs, can be transformed in an instant by forces beyond our control. If one civilization could be erased and forgotten, how secure is our own? Perhaps Göbekli Tepe was more than a temple. Perhaps it was a message across time, a plea from survivors to remember, to stay vigilant, a reminder that the sky above us holds both wonder and danger. And so, we are left with a haunting question. What lesson from 12,800 years ago do we need to hear? Right now, do we have the wisdom to listen, or will our own story one day be buried, waiting for someone else to rediscover it? Thank you for joining us on this journey. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you find the comet hypothesis convincing? Or do you believe another mystery lies behind this ancient catastrophe? And if you want to continue exploring the lost chapters of our past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because the past still has secrets to tell.